everyone, Sam Abernathy here, and today we're going to talk about how to bluff in poker and the 3 questions I ask before I pull the trigger. One of the biggest misconceptions about bluffing is that it's simply betting when you don't have a hand. But that's actually not how I think about bluffing. When I'm deciding whether to bluff, I'm almost never thinking about my own cards first. I'm thinking about my opponent, because bluffing isn't really about pretending you have a good hand. It's about telling a story your opponent is willing to believe. Today, I want to share the 3 questions I ask myself before I pull the trigger. First, let's talk about what is a bluff. A bluff is simply a bet where you're trying to make a better hand fold. Sometimes I have absolutely nothing. Other times I have a flush draw, or a straight draw, or a weak hand that probably isn't good enough to win at showdown. The important question isn't what I have, it's why I am betting. Question number 1, does my story make sense? Imagine my opponent replaying the hand from the beginning, the pre-flop action, the flop, the turn. Now I make a big river bet. Would they believe I have the hand I'm representing? Let's say the river completes a flush. If I've been betting consistently throughout the hand, that story makes sense. But if I've checked twice and now I'm suddenly bombing the river, it is much harder for them to believe. The best bluffs are not random, they're believable. Question number 2, can this opponent actually fold? Not every player is a good bluffing target. Some players make disciplined folds. Other players are simply too curious. They hate folding and they want to see your cards. Against those players, I bluff much less and I value bet much more, because bluffing only works if your opponent is capable of folding. Question number 3, and this one is important. Do I have a backup plan? This is where semi-bluffs become really powerful. A pure bluff usually has one way to win. Your opponent folds. A semi-bluff gives you another path. Maybe I have a flush draw, or maybe I have an open-ended straight draw, or maybe a gut shot. If they fold, great. If they call, I still have a chance to improve. Especially if you're newer to poker, these are some of my favorite bluffing hands because they give you 2 ways to win. Here are some of the biggest bluffing mistakes that I see. The first is bluffing just because you missed a draw. Missing isn't a reason to bluff. Your story still has to make sense. The second is bluffing players who don't like folding. And the third is bluffing without a plan. Before every bluff, ask yourself, does this still make sense? If the answer is no, it is perfectly okay to give up. Let's talk about practicing bluffing. When you're practicing on Play WSOP, try not to judge a bluff only by the result, because sometimes you'll make a great bluff and you'll still get called. And sometimes you'll make a terrible bluff and everyone folds. But the important question is to ask yourself the 3 questions. Did my story make sense? Could this opponent actually fold? And did I have a backup plan if they called? If the answer is yes, you are building good poker habits regardless of the outcome. So, final thoughts. One thing poker teaches you is that good bluffs don't always work, and bad bluffs sometimes do. So don't judge yourself by the result, judge yourself by the decision. If your story made sense, if your opponent was capable of folding, and if you had a good reason to bluff, then you made a good poker decision. Over thousands of hands, that's what winning poker really looks like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the tables.